Good evening. It's Eric with His and Hers HHQ. Just a brief Wednesday update. You can see where we're at with this AMT 125th scale 1953 Ford pickup. This is the promo build for the downtown service station in Waynesville, Missouri. I just wanted to give you a brief demonstration. Now, I do prefer to do this in the sink and get my sandpaper wet, but I managed to find my 3000 grit sandpaper, so I'm not worried about gouging paint or anything like that. I'll just wash this later on. But the primer was the first coat, and it was flat red, so that was our initial rust. Then I went with the satin fossil, so it wasn't quite seriously glossy, but it had a gloss to it. And then what we're doing here, well, as you can see with the hood real quick, is just going over it, giving it a very light touch with the sandpaper. Now this has a little more grit to it. I've actually gone over it and applied the sponge technique afterwards. I haven't given it a wash or my favorite brush do all the little touch-ups and stuff. I haven't done that yet, but I've gone over it with the sponge. I got real close to the initial fossil color, mixing timeless gray, light mocha, and a hint of chestnut. It was like, I want to say it was 3 parts light mocha, 2 parts timeless gray, and half a part chestnut to actually get a color that was very, very close to the fossil. But what I did was I sponged it in there, especially around the outside. It's a little more difficult to tell, but I did that. And then after I was done, I went over, back over it again and began a little more rust, especially here in these corners and along the back here. We'll not do the interior of the hood or the engine compartment too bad, because I'm willing to bet that if those young men at the downtown service station had this vehicle as an actual truck, they wouldn't mind the patina on the exterior, but I bet you that engine compartment would gleam. But anyway, so we've got that done. It's kind of difficult to tell, but I did the white on the hub and then sponged on a little bit of gray. I gave it a bit of a worn look. Obviously it's got age. Some of those darker spots are actually a dark gray. It's called pavement, I think it is actually. And that's where what I did with the hubcaps. Now they're not all obviously identical because not all wear is the same. And see how just the way it's applied, the sponge technique, you get a light texture almost not noticeable. So, I mean, now this one I'm going to dress up obviously a little bit more. But yeah, you see these that wear there. Let's, whoops, sorry. Here we go. That looks real sharp, I tell you. Sorry, anyway. Yes, the fan is still there, but I have so much going on. I've, got the color finally on the rack and stuff, but the engine and the drive shaft are finally in with the exhaust, and I want you to check this out. Look at that exhaust. You can't even hardly tell the seam where the two of them join there. But that was basically just the enamel paint with acrylic sponged on. Of course, the tip there. So we're looking good. But anyway, so I am still moving along. Okay, so the interior is still a surprise. I'm debating the red and green. I said I was going to try and have it on there, but again, since I'm doing the seat cover, I'm not so much worried about the seat. It's the top of the dash and the pads on the steering wheel I'm most concerned with. I'm pretty sure I'm leaning towards the red, so we'll see where we go with that. But oh, I'm actually really proud of this. Let me see here. Let's not get too close. Really, all it needs is the headlights actually mounted. There's a few little spots I do want to address with my brush, but overall I am really digging the way this turned out. Yeah, see, I left the signal lamps here, I guess the signal lamps, I left those chrome, kept them covered, kept the chrome protected. And then I applied a clear orange, and that's how we get what we've got here. I'm going to put one more coat of the black wash on the inside where it looks like it may need it, like right here. But otherwise, it's looking real sharp. I think I reversed it, but it looks good like this. I do believe the V for the V8 is actually supposed to be the goldish color, and the 8 is supposed to be chrome. But that's okay. I did it like this, and it actually looks really sharp. So anyway, back to what we were doing. When I initially discussed this truck with him, I mentioned I was totally picturing an old, nearly, in this case it's 53, so it's nearly 70-year-old service truck. Lots of patina, or plenty of patina anyway. Little bits of rust here and there. Eventually I'll get a little bit of rust down in the seam here along the fender. But nothing major, because it's so pretty well taken care of. But it's a work truck, and that's the point. It's supposed to show that it works. So how do we come up with that? We have the flat red primer, then we have the satin top coat or primary color. The satin was to provide an initial faded paint job. Now it's an all the way around fade, but it's still an initial faded paint job. So I've got my 3000 grit paper here, and what I'm going to do is start in here. You don't want to press down like let me see here. I've got an old sheet here, random piece of plastic. You don't want to sit there and like really scrub at it. What you want to do is very lightly, and this will take some time, just begin going over it very, very lightly, gentle circles. I mean, there's going to be some areas like up in here. I did try at my level best to make sure it was done in circles, but you can't always pull off a circle. But in small, light circles, you're going to go over this thing, the entire area, little by little, and especially here in the center, because the top of a vehicle is always going to get that roughness first. Now I don't know if you can hear it, but it does work better wet, but for purposes of this tutorial, real quick, we're going to go over it very lightly, little circles. You can get the edges. And I just keep going and turning the vehicle, or in this case the cab of the truck, little by little. And what you're doing now, this here's an enamel that you're working through, so it may take a little while longer. If you were using an airbrush, using acrylics, it would probably go pretty quick. But an enamel, especially one that's had, in this case, this one's had 4 days to cure, it's going to be a little tougher, I guess, but you're not going to press. You're just going to basically apply the paper and start moving it around. You're not pressing down hard. And I don't know if you can see it, but especially along here, along the edges, you're starting to get that powder. You're breaking through in this case, this was 2 light layers of paint over the enamel, or over the primer, in order to give it complete coverage. But that's what you're doing. You're going to keep going, doing your little circles. And oddly, this is also another way to find those little imperfections, like in the mold or in the paint job. You can see where there's an undulation where you might not have actually seen it with the naked eye, but when you start varying the tone of the paint by sanding away that top layer and the preceding layers of paint, you'll get an idea of where you're at. Now, as you can see, it is just now starting to come through. Right here. What you're going to do is just keep right on going. Again, like I said, I do prefer to do this with the paper wet in the sink in a bowl of water, but that's okay for this purposes with the 3000 grit sandpaper. Oddly enough, at 3000 grit, you're almost polishing the paint. I mean, you can still get up there into that 4,000, 6,000, 8,000, 10,000, 12,000, 20,000 grit sponges, and those are some serious sandpaper for polishing, especially clear, like your clear plastics. Those work wonders on your clear plastics, especially, you know, you do it in just a little bit of water and just keep working it, and eventually you'll get through. I'm going to switch pads, get a fresh pad, if I can separate them. I cut mine into from the big sheet. I cut them into littler squares. That way I'm not wasting sandpaper. But like in this case, I've got a fresh square. So I'm going to start with just a corner of the square, and I'm going to work my way around the roof of the truck with just this little bit of square here, or this little bit of corner. And basically what we're trying to do is bring out or reveal the primer coat beneath. We don't want to go too heavy. I mean, it's okay, like in this spot here, if you go a little heavy, that's fine. It covers up in your sponge and wash techniques later on. But you see, now I switched corners on the paper, and I'm just going to keep working my way around. See, we're starting to come through here. We don't want to get too deep into the paint, and I'm not even pressing. It may seem like I'm pressing, but I'm not. Now, out between the two corners, I'll fold this over and focus on the center part there, but going like this. We're starting to get that little more visibility. Yes, this is boring or long and drawn out, but when it comes down to it, the patience involved and the end result is worth it, is what I'm getting at. When by the time you're done, all this taking the time out, and by now I've already flipped it over. Now, instead of continuing to go all the way around the roof, I'm working this area here. We're starting to join sections. And eventually we'll come along here, the back side or the top of the window, and we'll make everything blend. But what we're doing, see, we're not going too hard. We're just trying to get that little bit there. Be sure we get those obvious areas, especially along here, because we don't want it just sitting on the roof. We have to take care of these areas here along the, I guess, the outside facing sections of the roof. We want this all to start to make sense to the casual viewer, someone who's seeing your model, seeing all the time and effort you've put into it. And the beauty of doing this, doing it this way, is the variations that come about are so random and natural that it's real easy to build from. Now, in some cases, your 1/35th scale, your 1/72nd scale, something like that, doing this technique may not be feasible. And that's where the sponge and the light layered washes come into play. But taking what you know from armor and aircraft and applying it to your automotive, your slightly bigger scales, is really advantageous. And vice versa, obviously. You're taking what you know from your automotive, your bigger scales, and applying it to your smaller ones like 1/35th scale and 1/72nd scale. Even to some of your ships, because ships come in much smaller sizes, which is a bigger second number. I covered that in the video discussing what is scale. But you can use a lot of these same techniques on your smaller scales, but when you have to deal with all that serious detail, then doing it this way is in all likelihood not feasible. But so here we go. As you can see, we're getting through this. It's no problem. We're getting little bits here. We're getting a little bit more to go through here. Evidently the top got a little thicker coat on the paint than other parts of the cab did, but I mean, you know, it happens. I guess you got a little bit more there than what you actually intended. But I'm going to keep doing this, or try to keep doing this, until we got something more along the lines of what we're looking for. And again, I'm not applying any pressure. I am just basically dragging the paper over this. When you start getting these little bits here, that's when you need to switch up and go to something like this. Somehow a spot that we missed. I think I'll switch to a new one real quick because we want to try. Here we go. And the key is when you're doing this, you really don't want to overdo it. You don't want to get to the bare plastic, but again, if that happens, it's okay. It's easy to address. But you're trying to tie everything together. As you can see, this here is really starting to come together. And while I can't do small circles all the way around, neither am I just going side to side. I'm trying to get some elongated ovals going, as it were, because we want this to work. And look natural, like, you know, well, if you were to look at this in real life, an actual vehicle that looks like this, then yeah, you would want to present, you know, as real as possible when you're doing this. Now, I said I was hoping this video would be short, but this is going a little bit longer than I expected. When I get to wet sanding it, I'll go back over it with wet sandpaper and really clean this up a little bit. But right now we are looking real sharp. I'm liking the way this is turning out. We don't have to go too heavy because we do want to maintain some of the paint job. That is a given. We said we were going to do that. Now, if you're like me and you find that, you know, some of this sandpaper's stiff, I like to go like this. Apply the paper to a paintbrush or something and just roll it up, kind of like this. That helps give your sandpaper a little more play, a little more to work with. And then you can do a little bit more here and there working with it. It's a little bit easier to move around. That also helps when you're trying to get like an area like this. Well, you see what I mean? It's like the roof got all the paint. And believe it or not, yes, I am doing elongated ovals here. And if we get a little bit on this bit here, the rain gutter, If we get that a little bit, that's fine, because we're going to actually apply a silver chrome paint to it, and then do once this part is done, we're going to apply a silver chrome paint brushed on to our rain gutter, and then using our brush we're going to stipple in rust. Pardon me. Oh, I'm sorry if I'm coughing and all that mess. I was just recently diagnosed with burn pit syndrome. I mean, it doesn't help being a smoker, but the burn pit syndrome, being around all those daggum burn pits there in Iraq, does not do your lungs any good. Yes, I've had all the imaging and everything like that, and as long as I've smoked, the doctor said, man, your lungs look surprisingly clear for a smoker as long as you've been smoking. I've never been a heavy smoker, and what was it? Good Lord, almost a year and a half since I first started noticing issues, and since then I've cut way back. I still smoke. It's a bad habit. I don't promote it. I encourage everybody to quit, but I smoke 8 to 10 cigarettes a day. It's a little under half a pack. I'm working towards it. I've got the gums and the patches just waiting for me to take that final leap. And no, I don't smoke in the house either. I smoke outside. Rain, sleet, snow, bright, sunshiny day, I step outside and have a cigarette. But I did the same thing in Iraq. It didn't matter. Getting mortared, getting shot at, people trying to blow you up. Break out a cigarette, light it up. Like, well, I know, stupid reasoning. But hey. So what do you think, guys? Got a really good idea of where we're going with this? Yes, up close and personal, you can see the wear. But I do have my 4,000, 5,000 grit paper. And when I get it in the water, you won't be able to see any of those marks. But otherwise, I'm totally digging where this is going. I really like the way that looks. But that's the roof. That's this side. And just for your viewing pleasure, I was playing around a little mocking up earlier. See, oh yeah, that's looking real sharp. What do you think? I am totally digging that. I'm totally digging where this is coming, or where this is going. But anyway, so I still have quite a bit more work to do. Um, oh, check out the front bumper. Ready? I'm going to put primer on the back. As soon as this, I'm giving it another 12, 24 hours to thoroughly cure, because what I'm going to do is take it and I've got my masking tape. I'm going to do the little roll with the tape on my paint board, and then I'm just going to tack that bad boy down so the tape completely covers it one end to the other, and then hit the back with the primer. And once that's done, there's not going to be any rust primer or anything like that. I'm going straight sponge technique. We want this. Well, that's a service bumper. It's a service truck, so it's going to get the rust. It's a big slab of half-inch iron mounted on the front end as a bumper. I don't know if I showed you previously. We've got that silver. Yes, you can still see the dial there, but that's fine. But I think I really like the way that looks in there. The only thing left to do, I've got the bar a oily look. I'm going to use my brush, my favorite handy dandy little brush here, and I am going to methodically go over the wire all the way down, paint the wire black, and the clip here I'm going to give it some color, or whatever. I'm suddenly brain cramping here. Anyway, but this is where we're at. This is Wednesday's video. This is the AMT 1953 Ford, going to be a service truck. It's not a rusted out wreck. It's a well cared for, well loved, patinaed service truck. There's still a lot more to do. I've got to do this bit of rusting or aging technique to do. Then I've got all the little details to do, the door handles, the locks, the trim, the wiper blades and wiper arms. I'm going to do those and then get the rest of the weathering and rust and wash on it, and get this interior assembled, get the chassis finished up. I mean, the chassis is finished, but you're supposed to mount the interior tub to the chassis before you slip the cab in place. So that's where we're at. Again, this is the AMT 1953 Ford pickup, presented by Round 2. I got mine through autoworldstore.com, and be sure you check them out. They've got a lot of fantastic kits. This particular kit is a promotional build for the downtown service station in Waynesville, Missouri. Be sure you stop in, get you some gas, vehicle inspections, oil changes, get your tires fixed. even some light duty maintenance. Get you a drink and maybe some quick snacks, some chips or something. Have a chat with them. It's a family friendly environment. Support local. Anyway, I'm Eric with His and Hers HHQ. Be sure to follow us at His and Hers Hobby Headquarters over on Facebook. If you found this information helpful in any way, be sure you like the video and leave a comment. I will try to comment back if and when I can. And please do subscribe. Help the channel grow. Let's get scale modeling to grow. I know there's a lot of us and a lot of content creators to choose from, but I'm glad you're watching me. Have a good evening.